Good morning, Jobman champions, and welcome to another webinar. Today is a very exciting webinar. Today is volume 8, which is quoting advanced. I know this has been a big one. I know a lot of people have been waiting for it. So this should be a very good run through. One of the great things about where we're up to in our journey together right now is you've got a good basic understanding of how the system works and how it can benefit your business. We've gone through some integrations, such as the cloud file storage, basic CAD/CAM and accounting packages, the use of contacts, kiosks, and staff. We've moved into lead and item specs to start getting some automation around your marketing and the front end of your business flow. We've moved into your catalog, looking at starting to get some materials, services, and some pricing into your software to start building on your automation of purchase ordering. And then the key foundation of operations and workflows. So the fantastic part about all that is, by now you've probably up to the point where your system's running quite nicely, and you're seeing some benefit, kicking some goals, absolutely moving forward. And then last week, we had the great opportunity to look at the first level of true automation through the software, which is quoting in a basic form. This round, we get to take it one step further. And I think this is probably one of the biggest areas of the software that people come to us looking for without really knowing the absolute benefit it's going to provide. Obviously, managing workflows and capacity is a big part of why most people go looking for an ERP or a job management system or a workflow system, such as Jobman. But really, if you can get the foundation of the quoting right in your software, everything else stems from that point. And what we're about to show you really is the ultimate in that automation. I've never seen a system as detailed as this for helping people really at that base level of business, which is, if we're not quoting and we're not winning leads, we're not manufacturing, we're not making money. So this is the cornerstone. Today's webinar is going to be a little bit different to my previous webinars. I'm going to take this one a little bit slow. I know I get very excited and sometimes I can get quite talkative. I like to pack a lot of information into these webinars so that you get the best out of the free educational experience. However, this is a big one and there's a few points it touches. It's actually not as complicated as people think it will be, but I think it's good to be able to slow this down and really take our time. And in fact, I'm going to show you the process of building this for your software to really help your business both forwards and backwards. Please do make sure you jump on the YouTube channel, subscribe, and under there we have a playlist called the Knowledge Series, which you can see on our screen. And you can see that already they've built 3 fantastic videos around basic quoting setup into products, and then the final result for automation, which is presets. So if you need some good reference points or you feel I didn't cover something well enough today, that is certainly where I would be heading to get some more information. And as always, that's accessible via the software. So today, our agenda is really to understand advanced quoting, benefit it brings to your business, and what the breakdown of that is. So we'll be tackling products and then how products relate to style items and components and parts, the benefit of CAD integration to speed up your quoting process for those companies that wish to utilize that, and of course the ultimate benefit to all businesses that use Jobman, which is presets. Hopefully by the end of today, you'll know how to create a product, you know how to create a component and or part. You'll have a good understanding of how style item schedules for price ranging work. And I'll dive into all this terminology in a little bit more depth. So don't worry, we're going to really cover this off quite well. How to use a CAD/CAM product to pull products into a quote. What information will transfer from the quote to a job? I think this is an important one because for a lot of people, whilst quoting is the foundation of your business, understanding how Jobman then uses that information to push forward into your jobs to give you the maximum level of automation and really buy you back that time and start building a massive return on investment for your platform. I think it's important to make these notes. And lastly, how to put together a preset. So all really exciting stuff. So like I said, we're going to start forwards and then I'm going to work you backwards. So the first part, of course, is what is a product? And in simple terms, a product is the culmination of parts or operations or services or a mixture thereof that can be used to automate your quoting. What I mean by that is the ability to take a group of those key components and put them into a thing that then can be added to quotes easily and quickly, and then modify it. And the way we do that is through two very important areas. One, products have parts, and those parts can be proportional. So that means that as you stretch that product or make that product bigger or smaller or denser, the pricing will change based on that change in measurement. So that's really important. That's a key foundation to one of the things that people often think when building these platforms is, oh no, but I make thousands of different products and they're all bespoke and they change with every job. How can one system possibly handle it all without me having to build, a million variations? And that's key number one, is because Jobman's products are proportionate. You hear us use the word parametric a fair bit. You only have to build a small collection of products to be able to manage a large scale of quoting variance. The second part is style items. So style items are the ability to change the material schedules for which that product is made. So if I keep it really simple, and let's imagine a benchtop. Everyone's seen a benchtop. You've got one probably in your kitchen or your bathroom or floating around. Now the product is the benchtop. The parametrics of that product, when adding it to a quote, are the length, the width, and the material depth. So just using those three numbers, Jobman can calculate an area. For that particular example, the parts are really easy. It's just one part. It's the benchtop. Either it's stone or it's laminate or it's concrete, whatever it may be. The style schedules is the ability to change, or style items, I should say, is the ability to change what that product is made of, or what those parts are made of, into range pricing, so that, again, you don't need to have 3.2 million products in your system. I can have one product called a benchtop. It has parametrics, so I can stretch it, make it bigger and smaller, and that will impact the price. And then I'm just telling Jobman what it's made out of. Is it high-end Italian marble? Therefore, it is X dollars per square meter. As I make the benchtop bigger, times it by the square meter rate, that's how we build the price. Is it very basic, cheap stone? Next price level. Is it laminate? Next price level. Is it veneer? Next price level, and so on and so forth. And it doesn't matter if you're not a cabinet maker. All manufacturers can benefit from this product. I mean, if you build staircases, you have balustrading. The balustrading is a product. As it gets bigger or smaller or taller or longer, that will determine how much material needs to be used. Therefore, that will impact the pricing. Is the balustrading stainless steel? Is it marine grade? Is it painted? Is it timber? Those are the style schedules. Gates or fencing, same concept. You know what I mean? Is it a chain wire basic tin? Is it aluminium? Is it steel? Is it framed? As the gate gets bigger or smaller, or the fence gets bigger or smaller, that's the impact on price. So that's the core foundation of what we're trying to achieve here. And they do not necessarily have to be very complicated. Obviously, the beauty of our system is that they can be. And the way we're able to achieve that is by giving you both those levels of power inside the quote very easily. And we do that using the style items and options, as I said. So a style item is the link to the parts. So the names, and don't worry, we're going to go into the software and I'm going to show you where all this lives so you can get a good feel for that understanding. But in essence, the item are the parts. So if you wanted to think of them in that direct correspondence. So in our example, the countertop links to the countertop part. So I create a style item called countertop. So now when I'm adding materials or quote pricing options to that item, I now know where they sit. So when I get my drop down in my quote, I can go, yep, I have countertops in my quote. I'm now going to tell Jobman what they're made of, and then I'm going to tell them how big it is. And the options are the range pricing options you link back to those items. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense, which is good. The second part, as I said, is the parts. And these are parametric. Now, this is a good moment to talk about the difference between a part and a component. All of your products will have parts, whether it be one part or multiple parts, doesn't matter, they'll all have parts. The advantage of components is we like to take it one step further. A lot of the products you produce will have a commonality of parts. So if I use cabinets as an example, just because it's a really good example to that most people can understand no matter the type of manufacturing service or product they're in. If you think about a base one door cabinet in your kitchen or your bathroom or your laundry, you've seen one. The parts inside it is it has sides, it has a back, has a top, has a bottom, has a door, has a handle, and has two hinges. So those are all parts. Now, a base one door has all those parts, but so does a base two door. The difference is it just has two doors, two handles, and four hinges. A base three door, a drawer cabinet, a tall cabinet, an upper cabinet, all have sides. They all have a back. They all have doors. They all have tops. So the advantage of components in our system is if you built a standard library, and I've seen a lot of variants in libraries. A lot of people use the libraries we provide when you first start up with the software, and that can range from anywhere from 30 products to 100, 150, say at max. Rather than you have to go into every single one of those products and apply those parts individually, you can produce the product, link it to a product type, and then components linked to that product type. So I create one component, let's call it a side. I make the parametrics for that part, and then I link it to all the products that use a side. And that really massively speeds up the setup of this process for most companies. And you will find when you start to build a couple of products and you start thinking about them or use the ones we have in the software already, that you'll start to see that commonality. If I use the staircase as an example, again, all staircases or the majority of staircases have balustrading. It might be two sides, it might be one sides, but they also all have a landing pad. That's a commonality, that landing pad, where it comes down and connects from first floor to second floor, ground floor to first floor. That in itself is a component because it will be relevant to all the different types of staircases and balustrading you put together. So that's the advantage of components. And then all we have to do is go into those particular products and change any components that aren't quite right to parts. For example, the difference between our base one door and our base two door is two doors, two handles, and four hinges. So we can add the component for hinges, handles, door, side, top, etc. And then we go into the base door, we just change the measurements of the door because now it's not 100% of the product, it's 50%. We put two handles in and four hinges. And we can copy down really quickly. And in a matter of minutes, once we've built the first product, we can build the 5 or 6 variations that you commonly use. So really powerful stuff. Really good, makes this setup really easy and a lot of intelligence. It also means if you ever want to change a product library, you don't have to go into every single product and change those parts. You can go in, modify the component, and it will affect your whole library. So I keep using this word parametric and components in parts. And this is just a picture of what editing a component or a part will look like for you. And it's broken down into several areas. And I wanted this still shot in the video so that at any point you could stop and have a look at this and get a good understanding of how something might be built. So I've used a very standard example that most people would understand, and that is a door. And that door has a type. In this case, it's a style item because I want to link it to those options so that I can change the pricing without having to create hundreds of different products. It has its name. And then most importantly, we build into the component or the part the way we want the software to read the parametric. So in this example, and we'll keep going with this base one door because it just keeps it nice and clean, the door on a base one door cabinet is equal to 100% of the product length by 100% of the product width. So when working out the square meter rate for that pricing, Jobman just needs to know what those dimensions are. So if I add that base one door into a quote and I say, it's 560 wide by 860 or 880 deep. Those are the two measurements Jobman can now do to take those two parts and say, okay, well, anytime we apply a door inside a product to a quote, we need to multiply that square meter by the square meter rate of the chosen style item. Super powerful, super cool. hopefully becoming not as stressful as most people often think when they think about setting this up. Starting to make sense though. Yeah, we're pulling the parts, they have sizing, and they have those parametrics. And then of course we have the quantity, which is the ability to say there might be multiples. So handles is a good example. In a base one door, it has one handle, but as I increase the number of doors on this cabinet, 1 door, 2 door, 3 door, 4 door, I'll have more handles or drawers. 1 drawer bank, 2 drawer bank, 3 drawer bank, 4 drawer bank, etc. And this is also where we can manipulate those product types. So I've said that all the base cabinets, tall cabinets and upper cabinets in my system utilize this part called a door. So just Jobman, go ahead, add that part to all those products for me. I also have another singular product called a door. So I can handle robe doors as a product themselves for fast quoting, and that can also be applied to this product type. So proportional to parametric, just to give you a really good visual example, and this was created by the customer service team. I absolutely love this. They use this to give us information to clients when helping around this area. And I believe it's also inside those videos as part of that playlist for your help menu. And it's a really good explanation when working out your parts. So in this example, we've got a 3 drawer bank, which is basically a cabinet with 3 drawers. It could be a sideboard, just could be a cabinet sitting in the kitchen or the laundry, doesn't really matter. And you can see that Jobman is smart enough to be able to handle these breakdowns from a price point of view without you having to go to a crazy amount of depth of information. So even though a 3 drawer bank in like a lineal sense is 33.3%, 33.3%, 33.3% for those fascias, when you add them up, it's actually still 100% of the product height by 100% of the product width. So if I want to tell Jobman to price on my drawer bank, I don't need to make each of those parts so particular. So again, I don't need to come in and build 42 variations of a drawer bank taking care of every possibility, 20, 25, 50, or 50, 20, whatever the percentages might be, because the total of those parts is going to add up to 100%. So this is another really good thing to understand when building your parts and components. You don't necessarily need to go to the detail of building the 100 different variations. You can build the one type of product, the drawer bank. We call it a 3 drawer bank because it will have differences between it and a standard 1 drawer bank in that it will have 3 drawer sets. It will have 3 handles, for example. And that's the only difference we need to make. When working out the pricing, Jobman can still take the 100%, buy the 100%, times them by the square meter rate, impacted by the style schedule to develop your pricing. Really good. One thing we're not going to show live today, but I definitely want to mention because it is a really important part of the software, is if you do utilize some of the CAD packages that we integrate with, one of the great benefits of building your product library into Jobman is if the names match between both the CAD program, and in this example, I'm using Mosaic and Jobman, it suddenly becomes really easy to utilize a drawing of a room or an area and to suck those product types in. And part of the reason why I'm not going to go over this in great depth today is because it's not relevant to all industries, excuse me, but it is an extremely important automation. So a lot of companies like to design first, so the design, and then they want to quote price. So the benefit of being able to do that and suck that directly into Jobman is I can literally produce an entire room or area or house or office building full of cabinets or products in a matter of minutes just by sucking it in. You've already done the hard work. Jobman allows you to use it. So this is one of the key things people want to get it set up so they can gain benefit from that automation, and that can definitely be done in the software. And we have some very good videos around that. So the ultimate point to all this is products provide a huge amount of automation for your quoting. They'll speed up your quoting. They'll also start to create far more, profitable quotes for you because it's easy to take that information and break it down. And then the ultimate point to that is putting those products inside a preset basically means we can create template quoting in minutes. I can have a preset. I have an example here of a kitchen, and you can see I've added 20 of the most common cabinets that would be part of a kitchen. They're all zeroed out. They've all got a standardized height, width, and depth. Doesn't matter. That can all be changed live in the quote. So when I come to quote, instead of spending hours of my life, I can take a plan, start that quote like we did in the basic quoting. open up a section, create an item called a kitchen, and bang in a preset. And then I'm just filling this out almost like an Excel spreadsheet. 4 base 1 doors, 4 base 2 doors, 2 uppers, 1 corner unit. Bang. And then tell at that level the system what the style pricing is. What are all those doors made out of? What are the carcasses made out of? What are the handle ranges? What are the hinges? And in a matter of minutes, I've quoted on an entire room. Huge, huge. So that's really good. Now, the last thing I'm going to mention before I dive in and we have a look at some of this live so we can work this information backwards so you know where it all connects in the software platform, is what is the benefit then of utilizing Jobman's quote procedure? So I think in the last webinar, we mentioned the benefit of being able to use our basic quoting system is because you've been following these webinars, and you've set up some catalog and you've got some operation times and you've got some services, you can just come into the software, add a quote, enter the material schedules, enter the labor, enter those services, get that quote accepted, and then push it forward into a job. And all those material schedules and all that time and all those services will come into the job for you. So there's a lot of automation there. And if that's how you're comfortable and used to quoting, absolutely, that's where I recommend you start. And then in the background, sort of keeping in mind that the opportunity here is to improve on that process. So rather than have to take a detailed plan and break it down and work out the square meters and count up all the handles and work out all the hinges and then try and put an estimate on all of those times, you can start just adding these products in almost off the plan. Like you look at the plan, you say, yep, I can see that. It's a 5-meter wall. We're going to have 5 1-meter base 1 doors in there. Bang, 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 bang. Actually, pull that one out. We're going to put a sink cabinet in there. There's going to be 6 uppers above that at 860. It's going to be 1 corner. So without having to spend hours and hours and hours of your life detailing down the plan and breaking it apart for the estimating process, you can start putting these in and it can be done live. So one of the great benefits of the system is once you have your product libraries and your presets built, this becomes virtually a live quoting program you can do with the client. You'll be sitting down with them, having a chat. What are you after? I'm here for 15 meters of commercial fencing. What are my options? Well, let me present a few options for you here. I'm going to add in our standard 1.5 meter fencing route. We've got a few options. If you want to do it in color bond, this will be the price. Bang, right there. Minutes. Incredibly professional, incredibly powerful. And obviously this will definitely help you win more quotes, which is what it's all about. So let's dive in and have a bit of a look at the software itself and get a bit of an understanding for where all these things lie so that you can see where the pieces fit so you can start building them. So under our catalog in one of our previous webinars, we showed you materials and services. Now, the great news is because you've started putting some of these things in, this is going to make building your product library really easy. But the first thing I sort of want you to understand is why there's a thing in your software called quote pricing. Now, we use quote pricing as a range effect. So this is the ability to say, rather than have to link to every single option, most options come in sort of like a range, especially if you work in an industry such as metal fab, for example, where pricing changes based on the London Exchange every day. It's virtually impossible for you to sit there and calculate the pricing of a steel frame, for example, based on live pricing for the day. Because overnight it's changed, everything's, it's constantly happening. So rather than do that, you would have what's called a price guide. And that's basically a range guide to say if they want 5mm cold steel or mild steel, sorry, this will be the price currently. And then you look at that every couple of months and you update it. If you're in kitchen cabinetry and joinery and architecture, similar sort of thing. Just because Laminex, and I'm not picking on Laminex, I'm just using them as an example, has 3,500 board options in a range, doesn't mean I need to worry about the in particulars of those materials. I can simply set up some range pricing. And I've done that here with just a few really good options, just so you can see what we're talking about. I've got some basic Malamine pricing. I've got a gloss pricing. So if the client said, actually want to upgrade my doors or my carcasses to a gloss finish, or a standard finish, these would be my different prices. So that's step one. And most of the seated sites have some version of quote pricing in them, but that's the first thing to understand. What is quote pricing? Because this is what's going to link to our styles. Remember, our two foundations here are style items and parts. So the first foundation is understanding style items. Where does this pricing draw from? And it's going to draw from this quote pricing here, and I'm going to show you that link. Now, you'll notice that something very important about quote pricing. There's this beautiful little symbol here, and that symbol says not available to order. And the reason we have that is because this is a range pricing, and you can see if I update this quote pricing option, hopefully you've got a few in your software to be able to play with, so you can look at this before you start building some. Not available to order is the status. And the reason being is this is just a generic price. When I actually go order that 5mm steel, or those 2400 by 1800 by 16 mil boards, I'm not actually ordering a range price. I'm going to my supplier, whether it be Laminex or Polytech or whoever you use, and I'm saying, for this job, I actually want that whiteboard. That's your SKU, that's the whiteboard. The advantage of the range pricing is, rather than have to enter those 15 options and really clog up my quote, I can say that if I average my pricing, or I take the worst price, however your company likes to do it, and I buy from, let's say I have 3 suppliers that all produce basic carcass board, and let's say one is 18 a square meter, one is 20, one is 22. If 99% of the time you buy the $18 stuff, but occasionally they don't have any in stock, then I would set your base range pricing to $20 or $20.22. The advantage being is every time I add a product in and I modify this style, it's always going to price at the worst possible rate without me actually having to go in and list those 5 boards. Now, when it comes to something basic like carcass board, that's not that stressful. If you always buy it from one supplier, you might just enter that as the range price. However, there are those opportunities where it isn't available, so having those options is good. But where it becomes really powerful is, for example, grain finish. Somewhere between Laminex, Hafele, and Worldwide Timbers, Laminex, Polytech, and Worldwide Timbers, there's probably somewhere in the vicinity of about 14,000 options. So you certainly don't want to have a drop down your quote with 14,000 materials linked. Instead, setting up a range pricing for your grain board means you'll have the coverall. Doesn't matter the color, so long as you've got that finish covered. Then that's your price. Quoting becomes really easy. Your estimating team comes in, they add products, they choose grain. That grain is linked to doors and carcass. That impacts the price without them having to worry about the nitty-gritty specifics. And this is what will help massively speed up your quoting, which is huge. So that's part one, is understanding the style items. The second thing is understanding product types. So product types, as we said, are the ability to change the different types of products you use so that components can work at maximum effect. So to set some of these things up, and this is why I said working backwards, you've seen the final product, which is the product. Sorry, that wasn't what I meant to say there. But you've seen the final resolution here, which is the product. How do we start maneuvering some of this stuff backwards? So let's have a look. So inside settings, catalog, one of the first places you can start is product types. And for most people, I recommend, if you don't have many in your seated side already, or a different type of industry, or you have unique needs outside of what the software comes with out of a base, just build a couple. And in today's example, we're going to use this base covenant option here. So these are nice and easy. Just create them. They're just a name field, but this is now a product type I can apply to a product, and that will start my commonality. So start with just a couple, and then that can help put them together. So I'm going to create a product type, and I'm just going to call it a box. I'm going to make a really simple one together so that you can see this effect. So that's part one. I've now got a product type called a box. The second part is the style items. What style options is my box going to be available to make out of? So again, in catalog, and a lot of these settings are in catalog for you, it's nice and easy. We have a beautiful thing called styles. Don't worry too much about ranges for now. This is like a last layer of automation. You can dive into the documentation if you want to learn a little bit more about this. But this is basically for companies that do a lot of repetitive builder work, where rather than have their estimating team choose from a custom range, like a bespoke range, with every job being different, you can set up some foundational options that are always the same. So in this example, we've got standard, and I've chosen my standard base options in here. So I can just add products into a kitchen, choose my standard range, it will price the whole kitchen. 20 seconds, done. And then if I want to, I can change them to custom inside the quote. But this is a good way for anyone that does a lot of repetitive work. You can utilize styles. The main thing we're looking at though today are the items. So this is what I showed you earlier, which is this is our link between our parts inside our product to affect our pricing. And again, These are just titles. So nice and easy. Now for my box example, I'm actually going to use the same material schedules as my carcass. That's already been built, so I don't need to build a new one. Nice and easy. The second part to styles, as we said, is options. So the options are then, what options do I have available for that particular range? So we'll use the carcass as the example because that's what I'm going to build my box out of. And you can see here that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 options there. So that means any product I bring into a quote that has a part or a component that is linked to carcass as the style item, I can choose any of these range finishes and that will impact the pricing. And the link here is your quote pricing options. So you can see I've got the name of the option, just something easy for me to refer to when I'm looking at my drop-down. I've selected the items in which it relates to, or the parts which it relates to, and in this example, it's only available for carcass, although I probably could do this for doors in case someone wanted to just produce a really basic door. And then I've linked it directly to the quote pricing option in my material schedule. So that's the link. And it's really that easy. So the beautiful thing is because you've got some quote pricing built into your system, you've got some product types. As we now start adding products with their parts, they're automatically going to start linking to these style items. But I think that's an important thing to show because it's quite often a question we get. Okay, I understand I've built some products or I've seen some products in your system, has parts. I can see style items as a drop down, but where do I influence that pricing? And this is where you do it: settings, catalog, styles, options, which also means if you want to change any of these, it's really easy. I don't need to go into this area. I can just go into the quote pricing area and change the price. So this is one of the other benefits of this link is if tomorrow the price of my carcass board goes up from $21.19 a square meter for my range pricing, we cop a 3% hit. I can simply come in here into the catalog, export my catalog, look at my brand, quote pricing, just change those prices, re-import it, bang. All of my products are back up to date with their pricing based on new material schedules. Really awesome. It's also how you can create new ones. So if you're looking at our range options and you'd like to add more, this is quite a limited list, but it is a fairly good coverall. But maybe in your business, when dealing with doors, for example, you have two versions of two-pack painting. You have a price for full coat and a price for half coat. So this is how you would do it. You'd create a quote pricing in your catalog. You'd call it half two-pack painted. You'd give it a price per square meter, not available to order, and then you come back into your style options, and then you create the style option for two-pack painted, and you link it to the types. In this case, it's probably going to be doors, although you might build carcasses out of it as well. And this is relevant to other businesses as well. So whether it be fencing or steel, this is how you make these links. So my list here for my balustrading, for example, of style options could be high-grade marine finish steel. It could be aluminium. It could be tensile wire. It could be hardwood. It could be veneer. Those could be my 5 style options. So I take those 5 style options, I link them to the catalog items for range pricing. Bang. I can bring in my products and I can most importantly manage my pricing in a very easy way. I don't need to worry about my 42,000 catalog items. I can just focus on that set of 20 or 30 or 15 or 50, however many you want to build, to make sure that my pricing is always up to date from a quoting point of view. So that's your first 3 steps. We've got some product types, we've got some style items, we've got some options. The last part then, of course, is to link them all together. And we link them all together utilizing a product. Now, I often get this question: what should I do first? Should I build some products first, or should I build components and parts? And my recommendation is always go build a product. Just try it. Have a look at it. See what we're talking about with all this information. You've done a lot of the background setup already. You've got some labor operations, so those can be added in. You've probably built some services by now. They can be added in. And now you've got that final link understanding for quote pricing. How can I, bring in that quote pricing to link to those parts? So the good thing is you can start just building a product off the bat. And if we call our product our box unit, SKU and barcode, irrelevant, but something that may be used in the future for some scanning technology. I give this type, And you can see I can now link it to my box type. Fantastic. And I'm just going to give it standard length, height, width, length, and depth. I apologize. I probably should have had more coffee before I start this. So I'm going to make this a really weird one, but my standard is just a meter by meter by meter cube box. Easy. Now, as mentioned, this isn't important. I can put anything on these product sizes, or volume or weight, depending on the type of business you're in. This is just a standard, just so I have one, so that when it comes in, the software has something to work with. That's all. When we're actually in the quote, I can come in and, as I said, I can change these measurements live for every different quote. So I might just manufacture a box, but I can change that several different ways. Now, when you produce standardized products for your business, and a lot of businesses do, we deal with a lot of companies that deal with things such as fencing or traybacks for vehicles or campers or dongers, or many, many, many different industries use this software. You might actually have standardized sizing for your product. So you might sell 3 products, and one product might be, for example, a 12 by 6 donger, one might be a 12 by 8, and one might be the deluxe where it's 20 by 14. So this would be the opportunity to put that in. The last part to that is pricing strategy. Now, our recommendation for a lot of manufacturing services is start with this set it variable. Much like the catalog, the advantage here is by leaving it as variable, when this gets added to a quote, you're letting Jobman do what it's meant to do. So it adds the product, it multiplies it by the number of those products. So if there's 10, I've got 10 boxes. Then it multiplies it by the total square meter rate for the material schedule I tell it. So in this case, I'm going to tell it in a quote, it might be 16 mil basic board. And that's how it affects the pricing. And then it adds in my labor component and my services to build this box. And it wraps it all up, times it by your charge out rate or your overhead or your profit margin, and there's the price of your product. The advantage of doing it as a variable is as my material prices increase or change, as my labor operation default charge out rates change, as my services change, I don't need to go in and modify my product library. I can simply change those prices in my system, which you're going to be doing constantly as you optimize and as just business evolves. And I know comfortably that as soon as I make those changes, any new quotes going forward in the system are going to have their pricing updated. With that said, the reason we have the option there is because for a lot of companies, they do build fixed price options. So they've already done the material, and that donger is a very good example, where they've done all the material schedules, they've added them all up, they've added the labor, and they set that as a set price. So every time an estimator adds in a 12 by 3 with all the inclusions, I just want it to be this price. Now, it does mean that as those prices go up, what you're going to see inside Jobman is your profit margins are going to change. It's smart enough to go, just because you've told me this is the fixed price, if material schedule pricing, service pricing, and operational cost pricing increases, Jobman's going to start reducing those profit margins to the point where it might actually go red. And we've had a few clients experience this, where they've been selling a product for many years at a price, and they haven't realized that over the years, the pricing behind the materials in that product have changed, and therefore it's now in a state where they're losing money every time they sell that product. And that, I know that's a horrible thought to have from a business point of view, but the incredible part to that side is the fact that Jobman was able to isolate that for them and show them that information, and they could go through and update their pricing. So that's really good. Now, do forgive me, I'm on a demonstration site, so this will take a little bit longer than yours. Yours normally will. This is not a live site. But normally producing your products is nice and easy. So we have a product now, and the important part is I have a product type. So I've linked it to my product type, which is my box, which is linked to my style items. So what I need to do now is I need to add some parts into that box or components so that I can drag that pricing. So back inside our products there, I think my internet's having a bit of a conniption at the moment with running a webinar, running this at the same time, but all good. So we can now have a look through my products, and you can see here that our box unit is there. Fantastic. Now, there's 2 things I want to do. I want to add some parts to this, and I want to add some labor so that every time I add this into a quote, it's nice and fast. Now, I could go into my components and apply those components, and this would auto-fill. And I'm going to show you that. But before I do that, I just want to show you how to add parts. So it becomes really easy and you can see this as a non-complicated situation. So in this particular one, I'm just going to add some labor. And the operation to make my box is I have to cut it. And I know from experience that a 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter box takes the team 15 minutes to cut. In comes the labor. So you're starting to see the automation. Now, when I add this product to a quote, it's going to automatically add in this labor. If I add another labor operation in here, and I add in some time for edging as well, it takes 5 minutes to edge those boards. Bang. Now I've got 2 cost centers associated. And the great thing about Jobman is it will immediately start to add these prices up so you can tell this is working right for you. This is working. It's happening live. So now every time I add this box unit to a quote, I've got time coming in, automatically set to my default charge out rate, which we built previously, however you've got it set up, and I've got some times allocating. Now, this is super important because one of the most important benefits to any business that Jobman provides is the difference between estimate and actual. And this is how we are deriving that information. Common question I get is, why doesn't your system work in linear meter rates? For like boxes, for kitchens, for example. It does work perfectly for things like channeling and other stuff like that. But from a product point of view, the reason why we don't utilize that system is because it's very hard to break down. Products I can now break down. Because this product has parts, it has labor, has services, has materials, I can break them apart. So when I add this box to a quote and I run the job, let's say it's 10 boxes, which means it's 150 minutes of cutting. Without me having to do anything, Jobman is automatically going to schedule 150 minutes of cutting into that job, which is, of course, how our workflows work, our operations work, and our capacity works. That's the line of automation. But the ultimate goal is the reporting. I can now say, because I've added these 10 products and we've got 150 minutes of cutting, go cut those 10 boxes for me. And a team will go cut them. Now, if consistently they come back and it's always 180 minutes of cutting, or 170 minutes of cutting, it's always over. I have 2 options. I now have information I didn't have before, which is A, we have been running a profit dip every time we've produced this product because the team is unable to manufacture it in a time that we expect. So I've got 2 choices. Number 1, I can increase all my labor allowance times on my products, which is very easy to do in the software. You can export the list and change the operational times, suck it back in, say add 10% to all my cutting. Beautiful. I've just modified my entire product list and built more allowance for my quoting. So that's option 1. Or option 2, it might be highlighting an issue in your business. And that issue could be training-wise. It could be machinery degradation. It could simply be a bottleneck in your business. But very quickly, Jobman's going to give you that information. And that's awesome. And that's why we call this a continual level of improvement software platform. Just because we're starting here today with this product, and we're going to add it to some quotes, and then we're going to move them into jobs. It doesn't mean that that's where it ends. It means we then have the ability to come back in and continuously improve because we're getting live numbers. So that's awesome. I won't dive too much from there. You can also add proportional or style items directly into this product as a part. So I can come in here. And again, I want to link it to my carcass because my boxes traditionally have 2 sides, 2 ends, and they're made from either whiteboard, blackboard, or just basic color board. They don't get too complicated. So I'm going to link it to the style line for the part carcass here, and I'm going to call this a box side, and it's nice and easy. Now I just tell Jobman when working out what this is, how do I determine the square meter rate by which to use? And this is what we're doing. Width. There we go. So, must be a value number. That probably does make a bit of sense. Width value must be a number. So, sorry, that was my bad. There you go. Good error messaging in the system. Keys are going off. So the beauty of this now is every time I add this box in, it's going to add a side and it's going to read the meter square because 100% of the product width by 100% of the product length times by the material schedule. So at $21 a square meter for my basic whiteboard that you saw in my quote pricing, one side will be $21. So if this box has for example, this box side, because it's a standard box, inside these items here. It will also have the ability to change the quantity. So for example, I have two sides. Change the quantity. And there we go. So now I have my box sides. The next parts I could add in here would be the box top, etc., etc. I can also come in here. Oh, that error message is still there. And add a service. It's very worried about me going on that proportional item. Thanks, Jobman. I can also add services directly in here as well. So if you have delivery unit prices, etc., or you have a charge out freight rate or something along those lines that are common across your products, this is another area where you can use services. I can put them in. So now when I add this box in to a quote, it's going to give me some cutting time, some edging time. Obviously, I would add in some assembly time, some drafting time, etc. I would add more parts to give this more sides just to complete out the box. And then I would add in the electrical work. So I'm just going to quickly add in another style item here, which is just going to be linked to the carcass again. And I'm going to call this a box top. And again, this is 100% of product length by 100. Oops, don't enter the percentage again. Percentage of the product width, and create. So now I both have my box sides and my box tops, and there's a top and a bottom, so I'll just call them both tops. That's fine. So now I have the full roundhouse for my pricing, which is very important. Now you would have noticed when creating that part, there was a couple of other little integers there. They allow for more complex part creation. So for example, if I was to put a shelf into this box, my shelf might be, and let's do it again. So style item, link it to carcass, and call it a shelf. Now a shelf is 100% of the product width. However, it's minus 100% of the material depth. So when I add a shelf in, it's not just the whole width of the box, it's actually the width of the box minus the material schedule use. If it's 16 mil, I need 16 mil. Now it's actually 200% because there's two sides to a material length. So I needed to remove 32 mil worth of costing to come in to be able to add that shelf so it sits between those two sides. Now that's starting to get a bit more complicated, but I just wanted to show you that the system can handle really complicated part calculations to give you extremely accurate pricing. But to begin with, my recommendation would be to keep it as simple as possible. Just add in sides, types, standard commonality while you get used to it. The other thing that's really important to note is that if your system has some seeded information, rather than you come through here and have to rebuild all these, you can simply come in and take some of the products that exist and copy them. So once you've done a bit of the hard work, I can come in here and I can, rather than have to build this from scratch, I can actually come in here and say it's a base one door out assembly. And I can create this product updated with the new price. It's kept all the parts and components from my previous one. And then I can simply come in here and remove assembly from this product. And now that particular part won't exist. So every time I add this product, I now have a base one door without assembly. Now, obviously that's a bad example because in quoting, as shown previously, you can remove operations from products inside sections. So that's actually a very bad example. If you want to create flat packs, for example, you can simply add all your products in and then you go up the top and remove the labor that isn't relevant to that particular job, for example, assembly and install, and that would remove that automatically. But one example could be, like I said, when creating our door series. So we create the base one door, it's there, and then we want to make a base two door, copy the base one door, update the name to base two door, and then change those doors from 100% of product width to 50% and create two handles and four hinges. And we've just updated this product to two new products. So that's fantastic. Hopefully, all of that makes a lot of sense for you. Now, I want to very quickly show you two things. I know we're pretty pushed for time here, but also I know this is quite a big area, so I did want to sort of slow this down and show all this links. But what I did want to do was I wanted to come in here just so you can see what's going on with that automation and see what the final result of that is. And that is, I can now come into a quote. I can come in, I can add my product. I can go in here. I don't have to go hunting through my product list. I can just type it in, grab my box unit. I'm going to add, I'll just add one actually, just so you can see the price breakdown. In it comes, there's my price, there's my product. And if I want to modify this product, this is where style items come in. So I can come in and change it from my standard range to my custom range. And because this is linked to Carcass, I'm going to change it from this 16mm baseboard. And the client has come in, they've said, I want a whole pile of boxes that are made with really high-end gloss paint. Not a problem. Come in, save the changes, change the different material schedule, update the price. The other thing I can do is I can change the parametrics live, and it will start to modify these things. And you can see there, it's almost doubled the price of the box because I've gone from $22 a square meter to about $180 a square meter. And bang, just like that, in a matter of seconds, I can take products and I can customize them. And with just, 60, 70 or 100 products in my system, I can very easily manipulate quoting to cover billions of variations, which is amazing. But the main thing I hope you've taken away from this is how to put that information together and how that might be relevant for your business, and then how you can very quickly utilize this to get some fast, accurate quoting that is fully bespoke. This is not like other systems that use very generic project management pricing, which is difficult to break down, has no detailed levels. It's all here. The fourth layer to that, of course, is now that I have products in my system, I can even go one step further now in my quoting, and I can live modify any of these parts inside the quote. And it's important to note that this will not impact my product library. So if just for this quote, just for this particular job, it's quite bespoke and there's going to be a bit of curved work in this box or something, or some routed edges or some really nice detailing, which is going to increase my cutting time. Just for this quote, I can update and change the labor component for this, and then that will automatically come in and just change this product just for this quote and give me some really good, really granular control. So even though you've made products that cover the 90%, we have the opportunity inside quotes to make that last change at that level. Second last thing I want to show you is what I mentioned previously about removing product labor. And I think this is very important for a lot of businesses. Quite often, you'll create products, and those products might not be universal for those labor operations. So good examples would be, like I said, flat pack for joiners. That's the ability to take a fully assembled and built unit and then say, we're not actually going to go to the length of assembling and installing. So I can remove those two labor operations inside the actual quote itself. I can do it here, or the easier way of doing it is I can do it at quote level or the item level, which makes a lot more sense. But it's also relevant to a lot of other businesses. So if in this example, I'll just remove the cutting for you. I know it makes no sense whatsoever because we need to cut this box, but I pull it out. That labor pricing will now remove from all the items in that area, drop the price, and off we go. This could also be used for processes in your business where, let's say, half the time you galvanize your metal products and the other half of the time you don't. You would have an operation time for galvanization if you don't do it externally with, say, like service options or anything along those lines, or you don't contract out. So you might want to build your products with galvanizing, so you get the automation, but then you want to go through and you want to remove them quickly and easily. And that's how you can do it. So that's a really, really important superpower there. And the very last thing before we dive into some Q&A, of course, is ultimate automation. And that is presets. So you have standardized products that you do a lot of over and over and over. How then can I use those products to maximize my automation in my system for my estimating team, or yourself if you're doing the estimating all day long and you'd be rather golfing or spending time with the kids or hanging out with people rather than spending your nights and weekends quoting. This is it. Under settings, quoting, presets. You have the ability to create presets, and these can be anything. These do not just have to be a culmination of products. You can utilize presets, and I quite often see this in things like service work. labor operations. So you might work a little bit differently to how I've just shown you there, where you add in material schedules. And then each time you finish a floor in a commercial job, for example, rather than have to remember to add in all the operations, you might simply create a preset with those operations ready to go. So I can just add the preset directly into a job, fill out the numbers, move forward. Fantastic. So presets are that last layer of automation. So I want to show you one we've just got built here, just to give you an idea of what that looks like for a business. So I've got a preset. I've just called it a kitchen. You can set presets up with sections and items. So you could even have like a standard house ready to go. You know what I mean? Section, house, and then kitchen, bathroom, laundry, ensuite. And you can see I've just added a heap of products in here, ready to go. Absolutely fantastic. So when I pull this in now, this becomes a very quick job. Enter the quantities relevant to this particular build, change the style item pricing. Quote. You can produce millions, multi-million dollar quotes in literally a matter of minutes, which is awesome. Or use this functionality to really just improve the process of your day, or just have it there, like I said, where you can just add in, I can add things like services, labor, materials, all that sort of behavior directly into the product, into the preset itself, so that these things can be ready to go at a click of a button inside the item, inside a quote, and really speed your life up, which is awesome. Okay, first question. Why did you add the box size as a style item rather than adding a component and linking it to a product part called box size that you already set up? What is best practice? Absolutely fantastic question, Felicity. The absolute best way of doing that, you're 100% correct, would have instead to go into the system and create a component and call it box side. And then I could link that box side to all my product types. The reason I didn't do it was two-part. Number one, I really wanted to show people what parts are, because parts is the first step. Understanding a part and seeing it live and how it comes into a product is very important, so that you can sort of see that information. So that's part one. And part two, I didn't want to go into the system and break all my potentially my other products by introducing a new product part into them all that would throw off the pricing. So that's why I did it at a part level. But no, absolutely. The best idea there is to utilize components. So go in, make the product type, base cabinets, go into the components, create a side, give it those measurements, link it to a style item for carcass, and then link it to the product types, base cabinets, upper cabinets, tall cabinets, hit save, bang. That will then go and fill one side or two sides in this particular instance to all of those cabinets, ready to go in a click of a button. So absolutely, no, you're right. Best practice is definitely to use components, but sometimes I don't want to get ahead of myself in these webinars. I want to just provide enough information so that people can understand the foundation of actually building them and then how you utilize them for the full automation layer. But thank you very much. No, great question. Jess, as a gate gets larger, we would use a stronger, thicker pipe. How to incorporate this into parametrics? It's a great question, Jess. Now, I will be honest, one of the things that the system is extremely good at is automation, but it still does require a bit of thought process. It's very hard to program a system that uses a lot of automation to make assumptions based on different things. For example, I'm fully aware that as, for example, a stone bench gets longer or a shed gets wider, the actual number of people relegated to that job has to increase because things get heavier. Now, that's something that's almost virtually impossible to program. How do you program in, once it gets past X, it's called breakpoints, price matrices, so to speak. Now, that is something we will introduce into the software in the future. The reason we haven't brought it at the moment is because it massively overcomplicates something that isn't really that necessary. For example, in this instance, you would simply have a style item that is a thicker piping metric. So you would have one style item, which would be like base tensile piping, and then you might have a stronger version, then you might have an extreme grade mining super durable version. And the idea behind style items is that ability to then change that pricing. So we're not actually changing the parametric on the part, we're simply upgrading the material schedules to say the pricing is going to increase. Now, right now, that relies on a little bit of eyeballing. That's going to be whoever's estimating to know, as part of their estimating process, that as this gets bigger, we're going to reach a point where we're going to have to upgrade. The beautiful thing about Jobman is you can build that style option in, and the option is there without having to rely on a system making assumptions on your behalf, which is very important. We certainly don't want the system to come in and say, oh, we think that once it gets roughly to this point, it should upgrade the pricing, and suddenly your quote doubles. It's like, no, actually, we can get away with it at 1.2. We meant anything over 1.2. You know, the setup requirements to build parametrics into what's called price matrices is monstrous. It's horrific. It can be beneficial, but certainly not something we want to start people with. So absolutely, you can achieve this. Yeah, you can do that. And like I said, one of the benefits is for a lot of people's, for example, in that shed example I gave, is what they do is they have the base shed size, and then what they do is they copy that product and they make two more sizes. They make it up to 1.8 or up to 2.4, and each time it goes up, they add more labor in, but they don't have to actually remake those products. They can copy the product and up the time. So very achievable in the software. Absolutely. Can they be connected to the parametrics? Great question. Currently, no. That's the short answer. Again, this is something that's a little bit complicated from a setup point of view, and certainly something we've been asked from several industries. Typically, though, a lot of processes don't increase in time based on manufacturing. For example, just because a fence gets longer, it doesn't take longer to cut. It's just a longer piece of material, for example. I do understand, however, things like the installation then do get longer. So the short answer is no. The long answer is absolutely. You would have noticed that when I was modifying that part, you could see on that drop down, there were some other parametric options there outside of length and width. There was, in fact, I believe there's material, I believe there's labor, there's service. So we have built the framework in such a way that potentially in the future, absolutely, you could build a sliding scale of parametric based on labor. For example, as the fence gets longer, it's going to take longer to install. And I think this would be huge. Question. We can update the profit margin on a single labor line within a quote product, but we cannot update the profit margin on a component item within a product in a quote. Correct. So products are a culmination. Very important. So the culmination of the things inside it is what determines the product pricing. So it adds up all of the style items linked to the materials, all of the labor inside that product, all of the services, line items, etc., and makes that culmination. Now, the reason we give you a fourth layer of independence in the quoting, I suppose, is to give you more bespoke access to some manipulation, like you saw there. I could just add a little bit more drafting or a little bit more cutting or a little bit more assembly just to that particular product in that quote. It's not ideal, though. In a real world environment, there's a lot going on. Building quotes, modifying small number changes here and there are not the best way of doing it. It's better to add them at an increased layer. In order for our system to calculate profit, it needs to be able to work off a baseline, and that baseline has to be the culmination of those things. So in order for example, that example I gave where people send fixed price products, and I might sell that product that I showed you, that box, and I might have had that product in at $200. In order for our system to be able to work out that actually selling that box at $200 is unprofitable, we have to make sure that you cannot modify the component level. It's actually an element level once we get down to that level of quote of those prices. Otherwise, it would break. The system wouldn't be able to calculate it because it would become a live wire system. So instead, what we do is we say you can modify the product profitability, you can modify the quote profitability, you can modify line item profitability, you can modify everything, but you can't modify the innards, because that's what Jobman uses to calculate that pricing, and that's how we can tell you when, if you're selling fixed price products, you're losing money making them or not making as much as you'd want. So that's why we distinctly make sure that you cannot modify a component or element level on a product inside a quote to protect that authenticity and give you obviously the best result that you want from your software.